Long, the storm could bring us up to 20 centimeters of snow by morning.
If our forecasts are accurate, this will be the biggest event so far this season.
It's great.
You love it?
Yeah.
I love snow. I love skiing, but I hate the cold.
It's not that cold out. I moved here from Winnipeg, so it's a little bit colder there.
Yeah, he was in shorts. Divided opinions, but we're all in this together, and all that snow will mean tricky travel tonight and tomorrow. Drivers and transit users are figuring that out right now. Roads are a mess, and the Scarborough RT has been shut down. Service has been replaced with shuttle buses. Let's head out to Kelda Ewan near Queen and Bathurst. And Kelda, plows are out. Roads are getting cleared, but it's going to be quite a while before all that snow behind you is out of the way.
That's right, Dwight. It will definitely take quite a while. The snow began coming down before 11 this morning. As you can see, it has not stopped. Now, the plows, as you said, they are out. They're planning to have them out between 5 to 7. Now, local roads, they will not get plowed until 11 to midnight tonight. That's what the city told me earlier. And meanwhile, I was out earlier and I was talking to people, and one complaint that many people had was that their neighbors were not clearing the sidewalks. Nathan Buckwalter has been delivering mail for 18 years. Snowstorms like this don't stop him unless...
If there's snow's not cleared, then we don't deliver. It's not worth the risk of injury.
He says in his experience, it always seems to be the same homes that neglect their sidewalks and walkways.
We have a little friendly note that we leave asking them to clear the ice.
Those in this neighborhood in the Sherbourne and Girard area say they can relate. People haven't been shoveling the sidewalks?
No. It's a hazard to a certain extent because, you know, if you fall, whose responsibility?
Property owners are responsible for clearing snow from their sidewalks within 12 hours of a snowfall. Last year, the City of Toronto received over 2,200 complaints. Of those, only 8 received fines of $100. For public roads and sidewalks, the city is asking for patience.
We see the high winds will probably blow in some of the streets, some of the sidewalks, and some of the lanes. I'm not aware of any complaints at specific areas, but this will be an event where we will probably have to do multiple rounds of plowing on our sidewalks and our bike lanes.
While the snow is causing headaches for some, there are others who enjoy it. Yana and Bella just finished their exams and planned an entire day outdoors.
During our winter break, we didn't have a lot of time because we had homework and stuff, so it's a nice surprise.
Nearby, there's Jennifer Moses and her dog Barley.
She loves the snow.
Enjoying an afternoon in the dog park. And Randy Valance is not complaining, even though he has to shovel.
I feel good. I don't know, it's not that cold out.
It's not that cold out.
No. I moved here from Winnipeg, so it's a little bit colder there.
All right, take it from me. It's pretty cold out here. Now, the city says this is the biggest snow event of the season so far. They say that they have all 1,100 pieces of equipment out there tackling the roads and the sidewalks. And they did say they hope to have the storm mess cleared up by the morning commute.
Now, Kelda, we were sending you further west and the snow made you stop there at Bathurst. Transit users, though, not faring any better than the drivers out there tonight.
No, they aren't. And due to some service suspension, the TTC commuters who have proof of purchase, they can board any GO or UPX vehicle in the City of Toronto without fare. And that's because of all the suspensions that's been happening because of this big snowstorm.
All right. Thank you, Kelda. So, Colette, just because you warned us it was coming, it's not making it any easier to deal with.
Yeah, I guess it really doesn't. Boy, hazardous conditions we are seeing on the roadways. You know, this is a system that's kind of come in sort of 2 phases. We're sort of into the second phase, but the enhancement will continue. I've got a time-lapse video that I can show you because, you know, we started off the day pretty quietly and then boom. Now that first wave was really because of the winds coming in off the lake. So it was lake enhancement because of the easterly winds, and then the system itself arriving and you can have a look at the CN Tower suddenly begins to disappear as snow at times becoming heavier and heavier throughout the day as we watch how this has moved in. Now we are into the thick of it, and I can tell you that we are looking at, for the city of Toronto, if we take a look at the boards, we do have a winter storm warning. So kind of an upgrade from the snowfall warning that we were in, and that's just when Environment Canada sees there's going to be a mix of conditions. So we've got the snow, we know that, but also reduced visibility with the blowing snow. So it's been upgraded to a winter storm warning. And again, as I say, that includes the city. Now, 15 to 20 centimeters total, what we're looking at here. Temperatures are actually going to be coming up a little bit through the overnight hours. We're at -8. Never mind that, though, because with the winds, it actually feels, you could take about 10 degrees off. It feels like -18. Speaking of those winds, some of the gusts will be over 50 kilometers an hour. These are just the sustained ones coming in off the lake. So we're going to get extra moisture from that. And that means those heavier snowfall totals are actually going to be closer to the lake shore. You can see, I know it's maybe difficult, but in the variations of purple that we have on the radar, there's some areas where the purple's a little darker, so we get into those pockets of seeing some heavier snowfall at times. This whole system still has to work its way through, so this carries on into the evening hours, overnight, and then should start to taper off between 3 and 4 a.m., but blowing snow will continue. You see the snowfall, the potential I have here. This is additional. We've already had about 8 centimeters of snow, and we're going to add that on top. Even once it tapers off in the overnight hours, Dwight, we're still looking at a situation with drifting snow, blowing snow, and flurries tomorrow. The temperature, as I say, comes up a little bit overnight, gets close to freezing. Then it's going to drop through the day tomorrow afternoon to -7. It's going to get much colder than that, though, as we head further into this week, and we'll have all this snow on the ground, too. I've got more on that coming up a little later.
At least all the shoveling tonight, we won't be that cold. Now, is the producer bringing you back in, or are we leaving you there for the whole show, Colette?
You know what? I think maybe they're just leaving me out here. I'm just kidding. I'm on my way back.
Thanks, Colette.
We'll see you soon.
Of course, you can find more information on what's open, closed, and of course, canceled tonight. And in some cases tomorrow, thanks to this snowstorm. Just head to cbc.ca/tomorrow or download the CBC News app. We have a live blog that will stay updated right throughout the night. Alleged serial killer Bruce McArthur has a court date tomorrow morning, and Toronto police say a, quote, significant development is expected. McArthur is charged with the murders of 8 men who had connections to the gay village. Their remains were found at a home on Mallory Crescent where McArthur stored his landscaping equipment, 7 of them in planters, 1 in the ravine behind the property. Last November, a judge set his trial date for January 2020. Closing arguments began today for the man accused of killing and dismembering a woman found behind a butcher shop in 2016. Defense lawyers for Ian Ohab say the evidence against him is circumstantial. Ohab pleaded guilty to causing indignity to a body, but not guilty to second-degree murder. Ohab has admitted he cut up Melissa Cooper's body nearly 3 years ago, but says she died of a drug overdose in his apartment. Defense lawyer Philip Klumak told the courtroom that Ohab panicked after finding Cooper dead and, while under the influence of drugs, decided to dispose of her body. The 30-year-old woman went missing in April 2016. Her torso was found behind Charlie's Meat and Seafood on Broadview Avenue soon after. Some of her remains were never found. A major development this afternoon in the case involving Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei executive on bail in Vancouver. The U.S. Justice Department announced multiple criminal charges against Meng and the company for violating U.S. sanctions against Iran.
The criminal activity alleged in this indictment goes back at least 10 years and goes all the way to the top of the company.
Meng's detention by Canadian officials after a U.S. extradition request triggered a diplomatic crisis between Ottawa and Beijing. Her arrest was quickly followed by the arrest of 2 Canadians in China, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. They remain in custody. Today, American justice officials thank Canada for its help in the Huawei case. The U.S. has to file a formal extradition request to Canada before the end of this month. Inside this makeshift courtroom, the families of the Humboldt crash victims face the driver of the tractor trailer that killed them. Today, victim impact statements began in his sentencing. We'll take you there in about 10 minutes. Toronto families could soon be shelling out more cash for household expenses. The city's budget launched today, and it means rising water and garbage rates. City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly joins us now with more. Lauren, how much money are we talking about here?
We crunched the numbers, and for an average Toronto household, you could be spending around $220 more per year. Now, we got those numbers based on some new service hikes recommended by city staff. Toronto families could see a more than 2.5% increase in their property taxes. That's tied to the rate of inflation. Staff are also calling for a hike in water rates. If approved by council, those would go up by 3%. There could also be a more than 2% increase for garbage collection. Now, staff also want to phase out a rebate program that gives you money back for using smaller bins, basically an incentive to waste less. And of course, there's that planned 10-cent TTC fare hike we previously told about that's already come under fire from transit advocates.
Some families might not be happy with those numbers. I'm thinking most might not be. How did staff explain the increases?
Well, they say this year is a bit of a budget crunch, and that's because of Toronto's growing needs. There's our jam-packed subway system, our housing shortage, our aging infrastructure. And at the same time, we heard today that land transfer tax revenues last year were lower than projected. Bad news, of course, when you're trying to balance a budget. Now, the budget chief says he hopes that millions for things like Toronto community housing will come from higher up.
We can't do it alone. To suggest that the city of Toronto can do this by ourselves is not, I think, proper. We need those partnerships from the federal government in particular.
Now, right now in this $13 billion budget, there's actually millions that aren't really accounted for. The city is banking on that federal funding coming in, as well as some unclear city cuts to balance things out. But that uncertainty has some councillors wondering what could be on the chopping block.
So this is not a balanced budget. It's nothing close to a balanced budget. In just glancing at the high-level sheets, I've already found $79 million in magic money. Savings that they won't tell us where they're going to come from.
That state of good repair on things like transportation, on our roads, on things like TCHC housing is actually growing in this budget. And so I want to make sure that we're not leaving after this term of council with a financial state for our city far worse off than it would have been if we made the appropriate investments in our public services and not just kind of hid behind this inflationary tax increase.
Now, this is just the first step in the budget process, and those councillors and members of the public will have plenty of time to weigh in. There will be 2 public presentations scheduled for February 7th and 11th, and the final budget will be at a special city council meeting for approval in March. Dwight?
Lauren, thank you. A woman who miscarried twin boys is devastated that information she gave to a store ended up in the hands of a third-party marketing company, resulting in baby formula arriving at her door when she was no longer pregnant. She blames a murky system that sells private information to third-party marketing companies, a practice a privacy expert says is all too common because Canada lacks protections that exist in other countries. Rosa Marcatelli from our Go Public team explains.
What am I going to do with all this stuff?
The unwelcome Welcome to Parenthood package arrived a few weeks after Kate Mansouri miscarried.
My husband and I, we lost our twin boys in May.
Inside were formula samples from a company she'd never dealt with.
I was surprised that some corporation somehow found out not only my address and my name, but also the fact that I was pregnant.
Mansouri had given those details to a pregnancy clothing chain. She says she had no idea Motherhood Maternity would spread her information around, giving it to several other companies under what it calls its Perks Savings Program.
I assumed that they would be using that to share the promotions at the store.
Our investigation found her information was then sold or shared again and again, by whom is unclear, ending up in the hands of companies outside that Perks program.
Where is the limit of on using the personal data?
On its website, Motherhood Maternity is clear that it shares customers' information. Go Public wanted to find out what happens in store. So here I am at one of the several malls in different cities that we went to do a test to see exactly what customers are told when they give up all their private information. Our transparency test found disclosure was all over the map.
So when you do sign up for it, I mean, you would receive all kinds of emails from all kinds of different people.
Oh yeah? Okay, it's good to know. So that information I gave you just stays within the store, right?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Canada's Federal Privacy Commissioner's new guidelines kicked in the new year, encouraging companies to be clear about how they collect and what they do with people's information. Organizations should disclose what personal information is being or may be collected, why it's being collected, how it's used, and exactly who it will be shared with. Privacy advocates say guidelines are okay, but data-hungry industries need to be reeled in with tougher laws.
We need to elevate our protections here in Canada.
It's unacceptable for the corporations to try to cash out on people's private life.
All the companies involved say they take privacy seriously and comply with Canadian privacy laws. They've now removed Mansouri from their marketing lists. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
Drivers who use the 407 can expect to start paying more as of Friday. I'm Greg Ross. I'll tell you how much rates are going up by and what sections of the highway are going to be hit the hardest. That's coming up.
The weather update is brought to you by Train Extreme Conditions Testing. It's hard to stop a train, really hard. Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Drivers who use the 407 are going to start paying more. Rates are going up as much as 14% on Friday. Now, the increase depends on when and where you use the highway. Greg Ross explains.
Having to pay more to use the 407 was not welcome news for many commuters today.
That's insane. That's just too much. No, they're just gouging the regular driver and commuter now.
The increase has some regular 407 customers considering other alternatives. But that could make your day a lot longer.
A lot longer, yeah. I'm going to have to leave earlier.
But it's worth it because you don't want to pay that extra money?
Yeah, well, if my bill's already really high, right?
I think they've always been too high. Now that they went up, I probably won't even bother taking it again.
The increases will vary depending on which section of the 407 drivers use and whether or not they're driving in peak hours. The biggest increase will hit drivers heading eastbound during the afternoon rush between Highway 427 and Highway 404. Rates will go up 7 cents per kilometer during this time. To make that trip now costs $17.54. Drivers on Friday will start paying $19.33. To drive that same stretch of the 407 during peak hours in the morning, drivers will see a 13% increase from $16.49 to $18.01. And the main reason for those increases?
We're not going to have a toll road that has drivers placed in stop-and-go traffic. We want traffic moving at the limit, and there's the purpose of a toll road is to provide an option to drivers where they can pay to use the roadway and arrive safely and reliably to do the things they need to do the most.
And that's exactly why some drivers we spoke to today say they are willing to pay extra.
It's cost effective. I have used it. It's worth, if I go to Hamilton or something, yeah, I'll use it to miss the traffic. It's worth it then.
Representatives from the 407 say the increases will also help pay many other costs as well.
The policing of the road, the maintenance, the snow removal, which we're about to see, is all paid for from toll dollars.
The rates officially go up on February 1st. Commuters can go to the 407 website to find out how much more their commute is going to cost. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
This was the scene earlier this month after Metrolinx canceled an express train between Union Station and Brampton. Now, after getting an earful about overcrowding and other trains from passengers and Brampton's mayor, it's getting ready to put that trip back on the schedule. Metrolinx says the 4:50 p.m. express train to Bramalea GO Station will resume February 13th. The families of 29 people who were killed or injured in the Humboldt Broncos bus crash have begun to tell their stories. They're reading victim impact statements at the sentencing hearing of 30-year-old Jaskarit Singh Sidhu. He pleaded guilty earlier this month to 16 counts of dangerous driving causing death and 13 counts of dangerous driving causing bodily harm. Karen Pauls is at the hearing in Melfort.
Looking somber, Jaskarit Singh Sidhu and his supporters arrived just before court this morning. Inside the gym converted to a courtroom, the Crown started by reading the agreed statement of facts. The most notable, Sidhu was not impaired, distracted by a cell phone, or speeding. The road conditions were safe and the intersection was visible. He just lost attention and drove through the stop sign. The bus driver hit the brakes, but there was nothing Glenn Dirksen could have done to avoid the collision. The Crown listed the names of the 16 people killed and the physical and emotional injuries of the 13 survivors. Several parents in the gallery were crying. Sidhu's head was bowed. 75 victim impact statements have been submitted. 65 of them will be read in court. It started this morning with family and friends of Logan Boulay. His mother was emotional as she shared some of the memories that still stop her in her tracks. Mark Dahlgren's son Caleb was injured but survived the crash. He submitted a statement but won't read it in court to keep the focus on families who lost a loved one.
I hope that they'll be able to get some healing through this. The families can find some solace in getting out there, the wonderful lives, and the lives were cut short.
Some of the families have said they're grateful to Sidhu for pleading guilty to spare them the trauma of a trial, but there will still have to be consequences. Judge Inez Cardinal will have to balance the law with all the trauma that's been caused and that we're hearing about in this courtroom. The maximum sentence for dangerous driving causing death is 14 years. But the prison sentences for crimes like this involving no impairment is 2 to 5 years.
I think the danger here sometimes is if we start from the outcome and work backwards, the sense is, well, of course something had to go wrong. All these people are dead. But at the same time, we need to look at, are we criminalizing every mistake people make? And I think there's a danger in that too.
No matter what the sentence is, it won't come close to making up for the loss these families have experienced or alleviating the guilt Jaskirat Singh Sidhu will live with for the rest of his life. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Melfort.
It gave me dignity, and I wasn't going to food banks. I wasn't eating day olds. The cancellation was like the rug being pulled out from underneath me.
The Ford government ended the basic income program early, saying it cost too much. Thousands were using it. Now a handful are taking the province to court. We'll bring you that story next. Did the government act in bad faith when it canceled Ontario's basic income pilot project? That's the question that went before a panel of 3 judges at Ontario Superior Court today. The program allowed 4,000 low-income people in Hamilton, Brantford, Thunder Bay, and Lindsay to receive monthly payments. As Farah Morelli tells us, many of them were in court today.
wasn't an empty row inside the courtroom for today's hearing. Anti-poverty advocates and people from as far as Thunder Bay braved this weather to come down and listen in onto the proceedings. Now, this isn't a case about whether the basic income pilot project is effective or not. What it is about is whether the government acted in bad faith when it moved to cancel it last summer.
We're hitting the pause button.
Last July, Social Services Minister Lisa MacLeod announced she was scrapping the program, saying it was too expensive. It was a move that was blasted by anti-poverty advocates. The pilot was brought in by the Liberals in 2017. The idea, to see if regular payments would help people living in poverty reach their potential. 4 people who were part of this pilot have now filed this court challenge. They're arguing the government acted in bad faith, essentially abusing its power to cancel this program years before its slated completion. Today I had a chance to sit down and speak to 2 of the plaintiffs.
It gave me dignity, and I wasn't going to food banks. I wasn't eating day olds. I could buy over-the-counter prescriptions. That is not in the realm in a low income. So the cancellation was like the rug being pulled out from underneath me.
I just want what was promised to me. I'm hoping that they'll scrap it and basically just reinstate it and let it carry on as it would have for the remainder of the 3 years. That's all I'm asking.
Lawyers for the province today argued that the government didn't act in bad faith when it canceled this program. They also argued that government policy decisions are not subject to review by the courts. Now, the panel of judges today decided to reserve its decision, meaning we won't know what that is until a later date. Meanwhile, the payments in this program are set to expire at the end of March. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
The Premier and Environment Minister Rod Phillips received a few absent and late slips today from students.
This is a message to the children of Fridays for Future to Minister Rod Phillips. Your refusal to meet with us to discuss climate action, as per our request, has been marked as an absence. This absence is being reported as an offence against democratic and accountable government. The Premier of your government, named Doug Ford, was marked late today on climate action. The consequences of this will be lethal heat waves, more extreme weather events, floods, wildfires, extended droughts, and a public health crisis. We wish this was not a joke. Unfortunately, it's not.
From the mouths of babes, Fridays for Future, a youth group committed to stopping climate change, organized today's demonstration at Queen's Park, as well as many others over the last few months. The group is trying to encourage a sit-down with the government to discuss the climate plan. Attempts in the past have failed. It just keeps on coming down. Here's a look at your skyline from the Toronto Islands. Basic whiteout conditions. You can see the tower there, though. The CN Tower is just poking through. Earlier today, it seems the snow was a little much for one Toronto Raptor, Serge Ibaka. Take a look.
Beautiful, baby, beautiful. Beautiful.
Even the Louis V scarf couldn't keep him warm there, Colette. Now, in his hometown in Congo, today it was 28 degrees Celsius. So maybe he's missing home a little bit today.
I feel his pain. Boy, oh boy, can you believe it? Yeah, and we're all going to be feeling it because even colder air is coming after this snowstorm. You know, there were records in parts of Ontario, northern Ontario, minus 47.7, Geraldton Airport this morning, a new record. Okay, it's not going to get that cold here, but that's the air mass that's going to be moving our way. First of all, we have to deal with what's happening at the moment. Winter storm warning in place. It includes the city, the area you see in red. This is because not only do we have the snow in some excessive amounts, but we're also looking at blowing snow and the roadways being in the condition that they are. The other areas you see in white, that's the snowfall warning. Some of the totals we're looking at 15 to 20 centimeters. Enhancement, there could be locally a few areas pick up 25. Enhancement closer to the lakeshore. And then these winds are going to be shifting direction, already starting to a little bit, but still there's been the lake enhancement, but also blowing the snow around and reducing the visibility. So a few areas in here, you can see where it gets a little bit deeper, the purple there, where there's some heavy heavier bursts coming down through here, but all of this still has to make its way through the GTA. Temperatures just above the freezing mark. Back at Windsor, 2 degrees. It's turned over. They had snow. It's turned over to some rain showers there, and then probably turning back to a little bit of light snow to come there. But for us, it's going to be rushing through. It may not feel like rushing when you've still got to contend with it into the evening and through the early midnight hours as to 4 a.m. So say between 3 a.m. for western parts of the GTA, by about 4 a.m., clearing out of eastern areas and then moving on. But the winds will still be blowing, and because of that, they'll be blowing the snow around, they'll be drifting snow, and that's why tomorrow morning's commute, and maybe some flurries in there as well, is still looking like it's probably going to be a nasty one. Then behind the system, we'll see some squalls setting up, and that's as we go later into Wednesday, possibly into Thursday as well. So there'll be some areas where some of those flurries make their way towards the city. Additional amounts, we're looking at about 8-9 centimeters that have already fallen for the city, potentially some of the additional amounts of snow on top of that you're seeing there. Current temperatures, it doesn't feel like -8 though. It feels like -17 right now with these winds coming in. And the cold air, even though the temperatures overnight are going to start to rise closer to the freezing mark, it's going to stay as snow, then turn into flurries, and then much colder air moves in. So the temperature actually falling through the day, -7 by tomorrow afternoon, feeling -13. Never mind that. What I want you to know is Tuesday night into Wednesday, -19, and Wednesday's high only -15. Some very cold days. We've got a few of those ahead of us to get through, Dwight.
Thanks, Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome. Big sigh.
MPs are back to business in Ottawa in a new setting. For the next decade, they'll conduct their debates about the interests of constituents from the West Bloc while Centre Bloc is refurbished. And with this being an election year, everyone is expecting heated sessions during question period. Julie Van Duzen, following the return to Ottawa, it looks like you have new digs there too, Julie. What did they opt to begin this session with?
Well, Dwight, it was pretty hard for them to ignore the firing of John McCallum over the weekend, Canada's ambassador to China. He had said some remarks last week on a very sensitive case, the extradition case of Meng Wanzhou, who was detained in Canada on December 1st, and he had suggested that she had a good case to fight the extradition and that it would be great for Canada if the U.S. dropped its extradition request. Well, so he kind of kept putting his foot in it, and over the weekend he was fired, and so the opposition certainly sees a vacuum. The observers are saying there must be a new ambassador very, very soon because we have 2 Canadian men detained with no charges, another Canadian who faces the death penalty. We do have a head of mission, Jim Nichol, who will step in. But certainly, Chrystia Freeland was asked about this on her way into the House of Commons. Take a listen, followed by the NDP's Guy Caron.
The central job of an ambassador is to represent accurately the government's position. John didn't do that, and that is why his position was untenable.
First of all, it's hard to say that you can actually accept a resignation without having a plan B. So it might actually be good for that plan B to be announced.
Okay, so that's based on the news of the day, what's happening right now. What are some of the longer-term themes they may be pursuing during this election year?
Well, that's it, Dwight. I mean, this is all happening in the backdrop of an election this fall, and they've all had little huddles and retreats, so trying to sort out their themes. The Conservatives are going to be talking about pocketbook issues and say the carbon tax and other taxes will only increase under Justin Trudeau because he's never had to pay a bill in his life. So they suggest because he was born into wealth. And the Liberals are saying that you thought you got rid of Stephen Harper. Well, he hasn't gone far. This is still the party of Stephen Harper, so take a listen.
It's not surprising the Prime Minister doesn't worry about Canadians' money. He's never had to worry about money. He's never had to balance a household budget.
It's no surprise that all we get from the Conservatives are warmed over Stephen Harper attacks and an economic plan that failed Canadians for 10 years.
So, Dwight, they were all in the newly renovated House of Commons, and they have not been there since mid-December. They have not been in question period and so on. So it was a lot of people in awe of the surroundings, but certainly the rhetoric that was flying sounded familiar, and get used to it because you'll hear a lot more of it heading into October's election.
And you'll be helping us follow along. Julie Van Duzen, senior reporter in our parliamentary bureau in Ottawa. Thank you, Julie.
You're welcome, Dwight.
And as Julie mentioned, the West Block will serve as the heart of Canada's democracy until Centre Block is renovated. Chris Rance takes us for a look inside.
The House of Commons is moving a little bit to the west for at least the next 10 years. Follow me and I'll give you a tour. This is the Mackenzie entrance, where VIPs will get the red carpet treatment when they arrive in the West Block. The new House of Commons was built in the courtyard where the old cafeteria used to be. A glass roof was built over the chamber with arena-style seating. The MPs' desks and chairs have been moved from the center block through the tunnels to the new chamber. And for the first time, the chamber will be seen in high-definition television. We're down here in the basement where there are two large committee rooms where the most important committee meetings happen and where the parties hold their secret caucus meetings. And if we go this way, this whole building is so tight and it's so old that there are very few places to gather. But just outside these two large committee rooms is an area where political staff, MPs, and reporters can gather and film if they need to. Now let's go this way a little bit until we get to the large stairwell at the back, and let's head upstairs to see what's on the first level. So we're here on the ground floor where the designers have squeezed in a cafeteria, an even smaller parliamentary restaurant, and a theater for holding news conferences. The Prime Minister's office comes with a secret stairwell. Back in 1968, then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau used his stairwell to sneak past reporters. He secretly drove to Rideau Hall to see the Governor General and called a general election. This is the new foyer of the House of Commons. It's a lot brighter and a lot smaller than the old one. As you can see, there's this large stairwell which cuts off one section of the foyer from the other, so it's going to be tricky for us to find out what's happening over here while we're over there. As you can hear from the ceiling are the bells. They're used to summon MPs to a vote when it happens. Reminder, get into your seats. Now over here we have Alex from Power and Politics. He's setting up his camera to do some tests before the big day. And looking over my shoulder at Mackenzie King, we have the opposition door. That's where opposition MPs will enter the House of Commons. And the final part of our tour is the government door. This is where government and MPs will enter the House of Commons.
The mayors of Canada's largest cities met with the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, and other top cabinet ministers in Ottawa today to present their pre-budget wish list. They say they need more money from Ottawa and fast to deal with a variety of pressing issues. The mayors seem to have a lot of clout to get what they want in this election year, and Thibodeau has more.
These big city mayors represent more than half of the country's population and 2/3 of the economy, and they have the Prime Minister's ear.
You've seen that the federal government is there to be a partner to you. I think that's something that has directly benefited our citizens over the past 3 years.
The mayors are pushing to get, among other things, a cash infusion to help with housing costs. They say have been driven in part by refugees coming from the United States. Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson says his city has had to absorb about $11 million over the past 2 years. He says Toronto is receiving millions from the feds, but Ottawa has yet to get any help.
My friend John Tory was the recipient of $15 million and in July $11 million. We also have that same challenge. We have over 250 families living in motels, which is not a great circumstance for a family of 4 or 5 or 6 people living in a 1 or 2 bedroom motel. And it's also not economic for us to continue to pay for that. So we do need the help of the federal government.
The mayor of Montreal says housing is one of her city's biggest issues too.
We're planning on building 12,000 units, 6,000 affordable and 6,000 social housing in the next years, like short years. So it's, but of course we need to support both for the provincial and the federal. So this is a constant need.
But the biggest ask is continued and permanent funding for transit. $35 billion over 10 years.
Building tomorrow's great Canadian cities takes decades of sustained planning, and mayors are already working and looking out well beyond the current 10-year funding horizon.
The mayor's wish list comes just ahead of the 2019 federal budget, the last one of the Liberal government's mandate and the last one before Election Day. Hannah Thibodeau, CBC News, Ottawa.
It has come to our attention that some language in the agreement you signed when you renewed your mortgage may have been unclear.
Unclear could be an understatement. Why her accelerated mortgage payment wasn't as accelerated as they thought. That's coming up after the break. Some customers of Canada's biggest bank are upset over an error involving their mortgages. RBC told them they were signing up for what the bank called an accelerated payment, which allows them to pay down their mortgage faster. But although the bank used the term accelerated, it now says that's not what the customers actually signed up for. Aaron Salzman explains.
Here you go, buddy.
With 2 young children and a very full house, life for Natalie Floyd is hectic enough, but recently it became even more complicated.
This is new to me, of somebody selling me something and then telling me, well, it's not really what we told you.
Last spring, when she and her husband renewed the mortgage on their home, they signed up for what RBC called an accelerated bi-weekly payment. That's a higher payment that shortens the amortization period, allowing you to pay off the house more quickly. Then, last fall, she got a letter from the bank.
It has come to our attention that some language in the agreement you signed when you renewed your mortgage may have been unclear.
The letter said her agreement stated that your payment type was accelerated, even though the mortgage payment you chose was not an accelerated payment type. It explained Floyd's payment and amortization period were correct and will not change. Floyd says had they known there was a bi-weekly option to pay down the mortgage more quickly, they would have chosen it and saved interest in the long run.
That's how I kind of feel about it. It was deceptive.
RBC declined an interview request. It issued a statement saying a limited number of clients' mortgage payments were incorrectly labeled. The bank says the payments, terms, and amortization periods remain the ones they selected. RBC wouldn't say how many people were affected, but said it regrets any client inconvenience. The government regulator that's supposed to look out for consumers when they have disputes with their bank refused to comment, citing an obligation to maintain confidentiality. Critics say that's not good enough.
And unfortunately, it leaves consumers thinking nobody cares about them.
That's how Natalie Floyd is feeling.
It's really hard to know what to do now when you go to renew because, like, who do you believe and are you getting the right information?
And next time, she says, she may look for a different lender. Aaron Saltzman, CBC News, Toronto.
Here's a look at where the markets closed today. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I thank Queen and Freddie Mercury. I get some power from him that is about stepping up and living your best life, being exactly who you want to be and accomplishing everything you so desire.
That's Rami Malek paying tribute to Freddie Mercury after winning a Screen Actors Guild Award last night for Best Actor in a Film. The Bohemian Rhapsody star has been on a roll lately, scooping up a Golden Globe earlier this month. While his win was not surprising, some others were, and Yellen is here with all the details of the biggest stories coming out of the SAG Awards last night.
Well, listen, you mentioned Malik there, and he won on the male side. And on the female side of things, Glenn Close won for The Wife, which was a pretty big deal because she's been nominated so many times and hasn't won on the film side. So now I'm going to share with you what really a lot of people are talking about today, Dwight. This was a moment on stage when the cast of Black Panther goes up to accept the award for Best Ensemble. And it was just so touching when the lead star, Chadwick Boseman, he ends up referencing a Nina Simone song, To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. Have a listen.
To be young, gifted, and black, we all know what it's like to be told that there is not a place for you to be featured, yet you are young, gifted, and black. We know what it's like to be told to say there's not a screen for you to be featured on, a stage for you to be featured on. We know what it's like to be the tail and not the head. We know what it's like to be beneath and not above.
Clearly a powerful moment there from the SAG Awards last night.
Yeah, one of my favorite movies of last year.
Yeah.
Other standout moments?
Okay, so, you know, depending on what age you, what vintage you are, let's say.
Okay.
Alan Alda.
Yes.
You might know him from the MASH years.
I know him
back
very
in the
well.
Okay.
Yep.
And you might know him from other films. He's gotten so many different awards, but he ended up receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award at the SAGs last night. And you know what? He really wanted to take a moment to talk about the craft of acting and stepping into another character and seeing with fresh eyes. And here's what he had to say about that.
May never have been more urgent to see the world through another person's eyes. And when a culture is divided so sharply, actors can help, at least a little, just by doing what we do.
And yes, that was Mike Myers that you saw there at the end. Okay, so now let's move over to another moment, because on the Canadian side of things and on the TV side of things, Sandra Oh.
Love her.
She got a chance to meet Alan Alda, and they talked together, and it was kind of a touching moment. I'll give you a look at that right now. Yeah. And of course, all eyes were on her when she went up to accept her award for Best Actor on the female side of things in a drama for TV. I'm talking about Killing Eve. She took the moment to thank so many actors who supported her along the way, including Alfre Woodward. Have a listen to that.
In 1997, she whispered in my ear, "I'm so proud of you out there. We fight the same fight." Jamie Foxx in 2006 pulled me aside and he said, "Keep going." And in 2017, Lena Waithe, she just embraced me and said, "You already won. It's in the work." So thank you to my fellow actors. Thank you so much.
Sandra Oh gives the best speeches.
Clearly very moved. I know, always so genuine.
Really.
So authentic. And, backstage, she did say to people that she wanted to make it known that just because I won this award does not mean that the diversity issues we're constantly facing have been solved. Don't think that. There's a lot more work to be done. So she really wanted to put the spotlight back on the issue that still stands, obviously. So that's something that was near and dear to her heart. And as always, she was very genuine about that.
She's a Canadian kid. That's why she's so sweet.
That's right.
Thank you, Yelena.
We'll see you soon, Dwight.
No end in sight. That is, if you can even see out there. Winter storm bearing down on the GTA. Colette's back after the break to tell us when we might see some relief from the snow. Anyway, stay with us. We'll be right back. Glenn David Hillman took this photo of this festive lifeguard station while in the beaches, showing us our GTA. Our GTA looks nothing like that today. Remember, get your photos to us by posting them on Twitter or Instagram with the hashtag CBCYourGTA, and we will air some of them on the show. Today's a good day to take some pictures out there. Okay, take a close look at these gorgeous photos. Frigid temperatures have frozen the powerful waves of Ontario's Lake Erie. Still, like it's in mid-motion, it was frozen, right? Creating this spectacular artwork. Just another example of the amazing show ice, snow, and Mother Nature can put together. And man, we are getting a preview of that show.
We are. That looks like
right
pastry to me, because I've said everything goes back to food. So yeah, it's like, oh, look at that. It's a really good pastry.
What does it look like out there today?
Oh, it's not looking so good at the moment. We're still carrying on with this. So the winter storm warning, we have this in place for the city and beyond, and also the snowfall warnings we're looking at for much of the GTA and beyond. So the amounts, 15 to 20 centimeters, and that's enhanced closer to the lakeshore. That's where we're really going to see those pockets where we get more significant amounts.
Okay.
And then we're looking at the temperature actually coming up a bit overnight tonight. We should see this snow tapering off around 3, 4 a.m. in there and moves out, but the winds don't stop. And because those winds aren't going to stop, it's still going to be blowing the snow around. We're going to have drifting snow, and even some flurries will linger. So that's why tomorrow morning's commute is looking like it could be pretty nasty too, because still seeing some reduced visibility, or not seeing, basically.
I'm gonna say it looks like pea soup out there tonight. Remember, folks, bend when you're shoveling. Don't bend over so you hurt your back. We have a live blog running online with all the latest notices for you. Just check our website, cbc.ca/Toronto. Have a good night, everybody.